Okay, hello and welcome everyone. So this video is going to be a solution walkthrough of a microeconomics principles exam covering core principles, demand, supply, equilibrium, and elasticity. If you want to take the exam, you want to go through and try the questions, you can go and find this on my Substack. Microeconomicprinciples.substack.com is my microeconomics principles textbook. You'll be able to scroll through or kind of search on it for this is called micro exam number 1. Maybe we'll put the date on it of February 2025 or something like that, but otherwise I'll probably leave that title as it is. You can go through, there's 40 questions, multiple choice covering those areas. If you don't want to wait for that, then spoiler alert, here are the solutions. I'll go over this right now, and then that'll be the purpose of this video, which I'll go ahead and I'll link up actually at the end of that Substack exam, so you can always find the solution walkthrough. All right, so question 1. A student has the choice between studying for an exam or going to a concert. If they choose to study, what's the opportunity cost? Remember, opportunity costs measure what we sacrifice, what we lose, what we give up. So it's your next highest alternative that you've foregone when you do one thing instead of the other. The next highest alternative to studying for this particular student would have been going to the concert, and the opportunity cost would be the sacrifice, the lost enjoyment. Company decides to produce one more of a unit. The additional revenue from selling that additional unit, that's just marginal revenue, right? Incremental change in total revenue is marginal revenue. If a decision maker ignores sunk costs when making a decision, they're following which economic principle? Well, that's just rational decision making, right? So behavioral economics is an entire discipline. Game theory is a subdiscipline and a tool set for microeconomics. Market failure occurs when we fail to get the efficient outcome. And public goods theory is kind of another subdiscipline slash tool set. The only one that's really an economic principle of these is rational decision making. And sure enough, for making good economic decisions, we want to ignore sunk costs. Pay attention to opportunity costs, but ignore sunk costs. All right, so scarcity is a fundamental economic problem. Why? Well, because we have unlimited wants and we have limited resources. Money's not distributed equally. Well, so that actually isn't scarcity. There's always unemployment. Again, not scarcity. Governments control most resources. Still not scarcity. Resources are only scarce in poor countries. Not true. Scarcity exists anytime when you have more wants than resources available, right? A bakery produces artisanal bread. Recently, the price of flour has increased significantly. How does this affect the supply? We want to recognize this as a supply shifter, actually a change in the price of an important input. So we'll get a leftward shift to supply. That's a decrease, right? So the answer is B. A movie theater reduces ticket prices on weekday afternoons by 15%. Attendance increases by 30%. This is an example of, well, you could actually compute this, right? Our definition of elasticity, of price elasticity of demand, is percentage change in quantity divided by the percentage change in price. So you could literally take 30%, attendance would be like our measure of quantity. You could take 30% divided by 15% and get 2. And then you could remember, well, because that's a fraction, if we get a fraction where the numerator is bigger than the denominator, we get a value that's greater than 2. Or I said that backwards. Value is 2, so we know the numerator is greater than the denominator. By the way, that numerator and denominator have important economic interpretations, namely change in quantity and change in price. If the change in quantity is bigger than the change in price, demand is really responsive. It's elastic demand. All right, so when making economic decision makers, rational individual would choose an option when the marginal benefit is at least as big as the marginal cost. So a correct answer here would be marginal benefit equals marginal cost, exceeds marginal cost, is at least as big as, something like that. Total benefit exceeds total cost. Well, if that's happening, probably marginal benefit's still bigger than marginal cost, because when marginal benefit equals marginal cost, then you've maximized the difference between total benefit and total cost. Opportunity cost is 0? No, probably not. Government mandates it? No. They've already spent money on it. Nope, that would be a sunk cost. Which of the following is not considered when making a decision using good economic reasoning? We talked about this. Sunk costs. On my other Substack, I have just on my main one, I have just a write-up about sunk costs and the sunk cost fallacy and how to make good decisions by ignoring them. I don't know. Company chooses to produce sports cars instead of trucks. What's the opportunity cost? Oh, it's the foregone revenue from trucks, right? It's the lost revenue. I should actually say the lost revenue, but revenue from trucks would be what you're sacrificing if you make only cars. Ford did that recently. Like they cut back maybe to zero how many sedans and stuff they were making, and they wanted to specialize just in making trucks. You have to look back to see if they actually followed through on that. I don't know. Okay, so if the price of a normal good decreases, what happens to the quantity demanded? Well, so it doesn't actually matter if it's normal or inferior. The really important thing is the price falls. So when the price falls, quantity demanded rises. That's just law of demand. Actually, this would be true for an inferior good as well. For normal and inferior, that's relevant for a shift in demand if we have a change in income, right? But when you get a change in price, you can only get a change in quantity. Which of the following would shift the demand curve for coffee to the right? A decrease in the price? Nope, that would be a movement along the demand curve. That'll be a change in quantity demanded. An increase in consumer income if coffee is a normal good? Yeah. A decrease in the price of tea. Well, this is a demand shifter, but if we get a decrease in the price of tea, in the market for tea, we'll get an increase in quantity demanded by virtue of law of demand. And then in the market for coffee, we'd get actually a decrease, a shift to the left, because the increase in quantity demanded would mean people would kind of buy more tea, other things equal, and therefore less coffee. A decrease in the price of coffee making machines. Nope, this would cause an increase in supply. That could definitely, think about like flooding the market with their increase in supply. That could lower the price, but that's not going to shift the demand. That would move quantity demanded down the demand curve to the right. A decrease in the wage for coffee farmers. Nope, this would increase supply also. Actually, these two things right here would lead to rightward shifts of supply. If two goods are complements, an increase in the price of one good will... Okay, so if you have an increase in the price of a good, by the law of demand, we're going to get a smaller quantity demanded. Because they're complements, this means the other related good would be used alongside this one that we're now buying less of. So we'll get a decrease in demand. So actually, what do we want here? It's below the fold of the paper, right? So it's like, where's the correct answer? It's not here. It's not increased demand for both goods. It's not decreased demand in both goods. This is a distractor because, as I said, let's see, increase in the price, it'll actually decrease the quantity demanded for one and decrease the demand for the other. Okay, so a shift in demand occurs when something other than price changes. So some non-price determinant of demand. If a product's a necessity, the price elasticity of demand is likely to be inelastic. So usually we're thinking about, with a necessity, an income inelastic normal good. So if we're looking at income elasticity, that's percentage change in quantity for percentage change in income. And if your income elasticity is positive, you have a normal good. If it's negative, you have an inferior good. And we'd say an income elasticity between 0 and 1 tends to be a necessity. Income elasticity greater than 1 tends to be a luxury. Now, that's not what this is talking about, because this is saying price elasticity of demand. And so we've got to use somewhat different logic. But the reason why, and I said an income inelastic good is going to, a good with a normal good that's income inelastic. The reason why I said that, the income inelastic part, is the idea that's not responsive to whatever is this shock, whatever is this change. And that's probably true with the necessity as well. Necessities are unlikely to be pretty price sensitive. These are things you're going to buy because there's not a lot of substitutes. In fact, that's the better logic to explain necessities as regards price elasticity of demand, is to say if it's necessary, you don't have a lot of good substitutes for it. So you have to keep buying it even if the price moves around. An increase in the cost of raw materials used in production will shift the supply curve to the left, right? So this is a change in the price of an important input. So if it increases, it's going to be more costly to produce whatever is this product at all possible quantities. And so that's going to give us a shift of the entire set of plans, the entire production process. A technological improvement in production leads to a rightward shift in supply. That's the opposite. This is like flooding the market. It's going to be, you can produce, you could either say it's going to be less costly to produce any given quantity for all such quantities, or pick a quantity, it's now less costly to produce that quantity. Both of those kind of explain why this is going to be a rightward shift, an increase in supply rather than just a movement along the supply curve. If a farmer is deciding whether to plant corn or soy, a farmer is deciding whether to plant corn or soy. If the price of soybean rises, what's the likely impact on the supply of corn? So this is a question about substitutes or complements in production. This is saying because they're deciding to plant either or, these are substitutes in production. The farmer could plant one or the other. Okay, so if the price of soybeans rises, the quantity supplied of soybeans rises. Farmer's going to allocate more of the field to making soybeans, which means there's less left over for corn, which means regardless of all the possible prices of corn, we're going to get less corn produced. So the supply of corn is going to decrease irrespective to the actual price of corn. Anyway, as a result of this leftward shift of supply, we're going to get an increase in the price of corn, but the farmer's judging other things equal. I mean, we're talking about relative prices here anyway. So if the price of soybean rises, other things equal, we expect they're going to produce more of that, and then they're going to decrease how much they're making corn regardless of the price of corn. If both demand and supply decrease, what happens to the equilibrium quantity? Okay, so you can think of a decrease in demand as consumers losing interest. So price falls, quantity falls. You can think of a decrease in supply as more scarcity. The goods got a lot more scarce. Both of those are stories that are going to give us a lower quantity. If the good's more rare, more scarce, the price rises. If people lose interest, the price falls. And so what's going to happen to the quantity? All we need to say is quantity decreases. But if we wanted to talk about price here as well, the effect on price would be uncertain or indeterminate. If a new report says that drinking soda is harmful, what happens to demand? Consumers should lose interest, demand decreases, price will fall, quantity will fall. And then against a stationary supply, well, against a stationary supply, we have a lower price and a lower quantity supplied, right? So the one cause, one effect principle says one market gets one side of the market gets the shift, and then because of something other than price changing, the other side of the market gets the price change, which causes a change in quantity. Okay, so I did 19. So 20, if a demand for gasoline increases while supply remains constant, what happens to the equilibrium price and quantity? So this is consumers getting more enthusiastic about this product, rightward shift of demand. If supply stays constant, then price rises, quantity rises. On the supply side, because of the higher price, we'll get a higher quantity supplied. We didn't need that so much. We just needed what happens in the equilibrium, which is, as I said, price rises, quantity rises. If demand for a good is perfectly inelastic, what happens to the quantity demanded when price changes? Well, perfectly inelastic is going to be an elasticity of 0, right? So think about like elasticity along a demand curve, right? At the very top, it's infinity. Between the top and the midpoint, it's greater than 1 in absolute value. At the midpoint, it's unit elastic. Below the midpoint, but above the horizontal intercept, it's between 0 and 1. And then at the horizontal intercept, elasticity is 0. So what's happening there to get a 0 is you have to have the percentage change in quantity in the numerator of the fraction of our definition of elasticity has to be 0, right? So no change in quantity. What happens to quantity demanded? The change is 0, right? Not the quantity demanded is 0. The change in quantity demanded is 0. Luxury yacht manufacturer notices that a small decrease in price leads to a large increase in quantity sold. Oh, it's because this is a luxury, right? So this is pretty responsive to the change in price. We'd expect luxuries are going to have elastic demand, other things equal. If we're talking about this as regards income, we'd say a luxury is defined as a income elastic normal good. Okay, so if we get a decrease in the price of good X and it causes demand for good Y to fall, what does this imply? So we get a decrease in the price of good X. In the market for good X, we're going to get an increase in quantity demanded. But as a result, fewer people are buying. We get a demand decrease in good Y. That's substitutes behavior, right? Okay, so a city implements a rent control policy that sets maximum rental prices below the equilibrium. What's the likely outcome? I should have taken this one off the exam. So sorry about that. This is a chapter 4 in my Substack, version of the text question. Or if you're following with like another text, this is under like rent controls and taxes. And Stevenson and Wolfers, it's chapter 6. So we won't have. This actually shouldn't be on this exam, is what I'm saying. So we have a rent control policy that sets a maximum rental price below the equilibrium. What's the outcome? So if we have maximum rental prices are below the equilibrium, this is actually even the wrong answer. So it's not a no change in market conditions. So we have just real quick, sorry. So the rent control mean is a price ceiling. Price can't go any higher. So if the rental price is limited to be somewhere below the equilibrium, it can't rise higher. We have a below equilibrium price that's being enforced. As a result, at the lower price, we can take our logic from shortages and surpluses. At a below equilibrium price, quantity demanded is bigger than quantity supplied. So we'd end up having a shortage of rental units. So, all right. I mean, since I made this, I'm so far into this video, and I'll publish this with a disclaimer on my Substack because that question shouldn't have been on this version. Okay, so coffee shop notices when it raises price, total revenue falls. What does this imply about the price elasticity of demand? So if you raise price, total revenue falls. This means you must be on the elastic portion of the demand curve. You're on the top part of the demand curve. Higher prices, lower revenue. If you're on the inelastic portion of the demand curve, you raise revenue by raising prices. An airline introduces discounted fares for flights booked months in advance. What was the likely price elasticity of demand for those advance purchase tickets? So discounted fares for flights booked months in advance. What's the likely price elasticity? It's probably relatively elastic. These are probably relatively elastic. Probably relatively elastic fares. So now I'm messing myself up. Hold on a second. Sorry about this. I am starting to worry that I've opened the wrong. Starting to worry that I opened the wrong exam. Did I open the wrong one? No, I guess not. Okay, fine. So I had different versions. I was taking questions that I kind of hated off the exam, and one of them was this one. So, but it stayed on. So sorry about that. I thought maybe I have different files, and so I thought maybe I opened the wrong one. Evidently not. So, okay. If both demand and supply for a product increase simultaneously, what do we expect about the equilibrium price and quantity? Okay, so if demand increases, consumers are getting more enthusiastic about the product. Price goes up, quantity goes up. If supply increases, this is like flooding the market. Price goes down, quantity goes up. In both of those cases, I said quantity rises, and then I said price goes up and quantity goes down depending on is demand increasing or supply. So the effect on price is uncertain. After a popular diet trend promotes avocados as health food, avocado sales skyrocket. What's the effect on the market? Well, this is going to be an increase in demand. Specifically, we'd interpret this as a change in consumer tastes and preferences. Coffee shop raises its prices and notices fewer customers visiting. What best describes this? Well, that's be a movement along the demand curve, right? It's a change in price, and then we get actually an increase in price, so we get a decrease in quantity demanded. New pesticide increases wheat production significantly. How does this affect the wheat market? Well, so if we're able to change the price of a important input and or it says we've got an increase in wheat production, it's definitely going to be an increase in supply. So a rightward shift to supply, it's kind of like flooding the market. New government regulation increases production costs for car manufacturers. What happens to supply? That'll decrease supply. So if we increase production costs, if the cost of production rise, we'll make fewer units regardless of the price. If both supply and demand increase simultaneously, what happens to the equilibrium quantity? So if both supply and demand increase simultaneously, what happens to price and what happens to equilibrium quantity? Well, they're both moving to the right, so quantity increases. And then, as we had one just like this before. Like I said, I think I have a different version of the exam but I won't change it now that we're this far in. The issue is that quantity is going to rise, and then the impact on price is indeterminate, just like this one right here, just like 27. Okay, whatever. So, and sorry if I'm rolling my mouse, if that's scrolling is picked up by the mic. I hope not. I moved my mic to the other side, but I don't know if that'll. I have to get like a trackpad or something. Anyway, so 33. If a major recession reduces consumer incomes, lowering demand. A major recession reduces consumer incomes, lowering demand for normal goods. What happens to the equilibrium price and quantity? Okay, so basically what this is saying is we're dealing with a normal good. We get a decrease in income, so it's going to be a leftward shift of demand. That's like consumers losing in as tripping over interest in income. Price is going to fall for sure. Quantity is going to fall. If the price of laptops increases by 10% and the quantity demanded decreases by 15%, what's the price elasticity? In absolute value, 1.5. So the formula is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So it'd be a minus 15% because it's decreased, minus 15% because it's decreased, divided by 10, right? So it's going to be a minus 1.5. But I have these all as positive. It's because this is reporting these in absolute value. On my exams, I always make them either for price elasticity and demand. I always make them all positive or all negative. Now, for income elasticity, sign matters. And so then the signs might mix positive and negative. 5% increase in income leads to a 10% increase in demand for luxury cruises. What's the income elasticity? One thing you could do, if you trust the good, that's a luxury cruise that's going to be a normal luxury, right? This is an income elastic normal good. Then we're looking for a positive income elasticity that's bigger than 1. There's only one option, so that's C. The better way to do this, because we really have to calculate this from the numbers, is to divide 10% by 5%. Yeah, it's 2. And then when you're doing one of these with percentages, especially for income elasticity or for cross elasticity, make sure that you don't just like literally divide 10% by 5%. Also make sure that you check that it's an increase so that it's a positive 10% and a positive 5%. Because if it says decrease, then it's got to be negative. The price of coffee increases by 8% and demand rises by 4%. What's the cross elasticity? So I should say quantity demanded for tea, but whatever. So 4% divided by 8% is 1/2. Because it's positive, it tells us also coffee and tea are substitutes, right? New environmental regulation makes oil extraction more expensive. At the same time, consumers begin to view electric vehicles more favorably. What does this effect have on the market for gasoline? So if oil extraction is more expensive, that'll give us a leftward shift of supply, a decrease in supply. That'll tend towards a higher price, lower quantity. If consumers like electric vehicles more, that's a rightward shift of demand, higher price, higher quantity. So price is going to rise either way, and the quantity effect is uncertain, right? Recession lowers consumer incomes. What happens to the equilibrium price and quantity in the market for an entertainment venue like a bowling alley? Okay, well, consumer incomes are lower, but what about if they're normal or inferior? That's part of the question, right? So if you have lower consumer incomes and nothing else happening, this is going to affect the demand side. If it's a normal good, we'll get a decrease in demand. If it's an inferior good, we'll get an increase in demand. So we're looking for a situation where price and quantity both move the same direction and where it matches the designation of normal inferior. So if incomes fall and demand shifts to the right, price will increase, quantity will increase because bowling's an inferior good. Okay. The other one we have to watch is what if incomes fall, price decreases and quantity decreases? If bowling's an inferior good? Nope, this would be true. This would be another acceptable answer if I said here bowling is a normal good. And then here I say, okay, bowling's a normal good, but what's the problem? Price increases and quantity decreases. These are moving in opposite direction, but we need them to move in the same direction because the only thing changing was this shift of demand. A theme park lowers ticket prices and visitor numbers rise significantly. What does this represent? Lower prices, more volume of customers, that's an increase in quantity demanded, not an increase in demand, right? Price changed, right? So if price changes, we need only quantity to change. In order to get demand or supply to increase, we would need to have something other than price changing. Now, maybe something happened that caused them to lower prices because they're increasing their supply, but we're not told that thing. And so increasing supply is going to be like one step away from a right answer here. The problem is we don't have a supply shifter. Implicitly there could have been a supply shifter, but we don't know that there's an increase in supply. Maybe the theme park lowered prices simply because it's trying to compete with a rival, or because the government's making them lower prices, or something like that, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be an increase in supply. in the sense of like lower production costs. If the price of the price of televisions, decreases by 20% and quantity demanded increases by 25%, what's the price elasticity of demand? So we need 25% divided by, so positive 25%, because this is increases, divided by negative 20%, is going to be a minus 1.25%. Oh, wait a second, I only have positives here. That's fine, because these are reporting elasticity in absolute value, right? Now, if I had a negative 1.25 amongst the choices, that would have to be the answer, right? And so officially, like the best answer would be something like this, where I just made these all negative. That's actually probably the best answer. Maybe I'll just leave it like that, right? But like I said earlier, for me anyway, for price elasticity and demand questions, I'll make them all uniformly negative or uniformly positive, because we either do or don't take the absolute value, whatever's going to be our convention. I'll swap out, or I'll switch between negative and positive signs for income elasticity, because that matters, normal versus inferior, and for cross elasticity, because that matters, normal versus inferior. I should mention, not all professors view this the same way. Some professors very well might give you one like this, 1.25, so maybe I better do it. I'm going to erase this right away because I don't like this on my exams. But you very well might encounter something like this, and then, yeah, no, the correct answer is this one, because it was a price decrease and a quantity demanded increase. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. Maybe go ahead and share it with somebody that can benefit from it. But otherwise, I'll go ahead. I'll see you in the next video.